I'm Rick Harp. This is your APTN News Brief for Friday, April 5th. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's pre-budget tour continues. Among his latest stops, Winnipeg, where yesterday he unveiled his government's plan to tackle Canada's housing crisis. Sierra Bettens reports.
People are being priced out of their communities, and that's not okay.
At an apartment complex in Winnipeg, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the upcoming budget will include $1.5 billion for a new Canada Rental Protection Fund to preserve and expand affordable housing.
Canada Rental Protection Fund will aim to mobilize investments and financing from the charitable sector, private sector, and other orders of government in order to maximize the ability to acquire and protect affordable housing.
The fund will provide $1 billion in loans and $470 million in contributions to nonprofits, charitable organizations, and other housing partners to build and preserve affordable rental units. Currently, less than 4% of the housing stock in Canada is social housing.
So we have to help nonprofits and community partners acquire units and preserve rents at a stable level.
Of course, it's not just cities feeling the housing crunch. In March, a report by Auditor General Karen Hogan found that the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation relied on outdated data from 2001 to determine funding for its regional offices. As a result, First Nations housing in the Prairie provinces was underfunded by $274 million. When asked whether the First Nations would be compensated, Prime Minister Trudeau did not directly answer the question.
We're going to continue to work with Indigenous communities right across the country to meet the tremendous housing needs that we know are faced by communities. That's why we stepped up significantly with billions of dollars in Indigenous, particularly First Nations and Métis housing, why we're going to continue to work to make sure that we're building those homes across the prairies and indeed across the country for Indigenous communities.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Still with federal politics, a 20-year veteran of the House is calling it quits. On Wednesday, NDP MP Charlie Angus announced he will not run for re-election in the riding of Timmins James Bay. On Facebook, Angus says it's time to make more time for family. He's among 3 New Democrat MPs who've decided not to run again, both Rachel Blaney in BC and 16-year member of Parliament Carol Hughes of Ontario are moving on. A staunch defender of First Nations interests, both in and beyond his riding, Angus often displayed a fiery demeanor towards cabinet ministers during question period.
Will the minister stop nickel and diming the people of Treaty 9 and commit for all the communities properly funded fire halls, vehicles, and a new school for the children of Ibamtung, because every child deserves safety and a comfy school. There is no reconciliation in Canada without justice for St. Anne's. So will the minister stand up and tell us he will meet with the survivors and establish a credible mediation process? Look at me when I'm talking to you about these St. Anne's survivors.
Hi, I'm Dennis Ward, host of Face to Face. Coming up on our next episode, I'll be sitting down with Dr. Rebecca Neckaway. We'll be discussing her career in medicine and the importance of becoming the first Indigenous Chief Medical Officer in Ontario. Tune in Tuesday on APTN or listen to the Face to Face podcast for an extended interview. Download and subscribe on your favorite player.
And we conclude today's brief with thoughts from our Truth and Politics panel. Here, policy analyst Jennifer Lewitz and media columnist Nigan Sinclair weigh in on the recent turmoil at the Native Women's Association of Canada, which is not only laying off half its staff, it's the subject of rumors about a toxic workplace environment. Could NWAC have lost its way?
I think if we're hearing about a lot of internal issues like this, it definitely goes back to the leadership and where it all starts at the top. You know, there's obviously always multiple sides to every story, but I think leadership in roles like this is incredibly important, especially if you're going to say you're Indigenous led. I think if the government has caught wind that there could be internal turmoil, that could be a potential for why funding was cut. I also think that we're going to see more cuts coming from the government as they try to get more onto a place of more fiscal responsibility. You know, we've been hearing rumors that the budget may see some cuts to Indigenous organizations and stuff like that. So I'm really not surprised to hear this.
The issue with most of these national organizations is that they're program delivery models. They aren't governments. They are oftentimes hands of the government, if anything, doing kind of focus groups, doing research projects, and so on. So I'm not surprised that if they have an infrastructure problem or strife within the organizations, battles of the organizations, that their program delivery would reduce and therefore their funding would reduce. The fact is, this is an organization that Ellen Gabriel has come out and said has lost its way. Going back to the 1970s, the Native Women's Association of Canada provided one of the most important and essential services to Indigenous women, because the fact is the Assembly of First Nation is mostly male-run, has been, continues in many ways to be, even though we now have a female national chief. I mean, the other problem is that their expenditures have been brought into question. There's rumors of a large resort the Native Women's Association owns, and that has an indoor swimming pool. And I mean, I certainly haven't seen this structure, but if former employees are saying that money is being wasted and that big expenditures are being made at the cost of employees and programs, which is the whole point of the organization, and they're owning real estate that's worth millions of dollars, I mean, it certainly doesn't look good, and it certainly doesn't seem like it smells good either.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Friday, April 5th. I'm Rick Harp.